Every soul is a candle.
Hi, this is Phillip Namanworth. Welcome to Creative Spirituality. Tonight is Rosh Chodesh Kislev, the ninth month of the year, the month of light. The holiday of Hanukkah is in this holiday, and for Hasidim, Yotes Kislev, and the 12th and 13th of Kislev, many holidays. It's interesting. I have to research it again, but light is used as the metaphor for spiritual energy. I was just discussing with a friend of mine today. There was an argument there's a kind of paradox. Light is a wave, which means it's continuous, and it's a particle, which means it's a separate piece. The word quantum, I think, means packets. And this light has both aspects of it. How does that affect us? They did the experiments years ago to find this out. I think it was Schrodinger, I'm not sure, two slits, and they would put light through the slits and see if the light on the other side of the slit interfered with the light that was coming through. And sometimes it's a question of whether our life is a continuation of just one piece and another piece accumulating, or whether it's one huge thing, wave that we either see or don't see. And this actually comes up in a Talmudic discussion with someone called the Gaon, one of the most brilliant Talmudists that ever lived. Lived in the end of the 1800s and the beginning of the 1900s. Lubavitch Rebbe knew him and had discussions with him. Some say he got a smicha from him. He could find anything about anything in the Talmud. So there was a question, if you're doing Shabbos, if they were talking mostly about religious people who were understood, the laws or whatever, and you break it, is Shabbos over for you? In other words, now that you broke it, it's over, right? Some people treat their relationships that way. It doesn't work out that well. Or you can see people today have this very interesting attitude. Why should I put up a mezuzah if I can't keep Shabbos? I feel like a hypocrite. This is some kind of narishkeit. The basic formula in Judaism is ma'at or docha choshek ma'od. A little light, no matter where you put that flame, is going to dispel darkness. You do as much as you can, and you don't stop it because you can't do everything. No one gets into any profession where they can do everything right away. You don't quit, right? You become an intern in life. How am I going to learn? You get into a relationship. You go, oh, this is really difficult. Should I just get out, or do I see it through and learn how to do it? So this whole idea is something continuous, or what happens when there's a break. Much of Judaism is about what to do when there are breaks in one's life. For instance, one of the basic plots of all dramas is that two people form a relationship, and then there's a betrayal, and what happens after the betrayal, right? This is the drama. Is there a reconciliation, and how does that happen? Now, that basic plot is basically the plot of the Torah. Hashem gives the Torah in total love to the Jewish people, right? It's a big love affair. We are called, the Kala, and Hashem is the Chassan. And then all the first thing we do is build a golden calf. Is it over? Seems like it. Hashem tells Moshe later, I want to destroy them all and start again. Moses says, no, 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 don't do it. So what happens in one's life? And this is what one of the great helps of the Torah is, that when there's been a betrayal or a letdown or a difficulty, does one just say, well, I made these mistakes in my life and I'll never get over them. And we have a concept called tshuva. It's not, means returning. Returning to what? Would someone want to return to the same place they just made their mistake? The work one does by experiencing life fully and trying to uh, make amends and correct based on the Torah takes one to a new place, can change your personality in such a manner that if you didn't have the difficulty in the first place, you never would have changed. And even though you don't wish it on anyone else, you say, that experience made me who I am. This week's Parsha, we have Jacob and Esav, and next week we're going to have Lavan. Jacob's going to meet a bunch of people who are tricksters, right? Lavan's going to trick him out of his first wife, and Esau is a very strong force, which he has chosen to use for negativity. So let's just review. We said that this first book of the Torah is called the Book of the Upright. It's the book of family. I know everybody here, people in this group, so many of us, we hold on to, what's the most important thing? Family, right? Some people think something else, but mostly we're attached. The whole first book of the Torah is family. There's no tribes yet. There's going to be. But first there's family. There's a grandfather Abraham, and then there's Isaac, and then there's Jacob, and how the family builds and keeps its members away from negativity to form a structure. Because once one is living in life, one is going to run into all kinds of different things. But the way we prepare children and ourselves to deal with the difficulties is by creating atmospheres that are pure in some way, that are not corrupted by cultural influences or things that make unusual demands on you, until you're strong enough to understand and to be able to ward off difficulties. In the same way of vaccination, sometimes you get the disease, so the body knows how to deal with the disease. So now you are stronger. And yes, do you suffer a little bit? Some people have different reactions to that. So first we have Abraham. Abraham is born in the Hebrew. We're in the year 5786. Am I right? Yeah. He was born in the Hebrew year 1948, which is the English year that Israel became a state. Until that time, people were making negative choices about their relationship with God and about each other. Were they forced to do it? No, they had everything they needed, and because of that situation, there were people who were holy here and there, but there was this major influx of negativity and idol worship. How do we define idol worship? Does it mean you bow down to something else? Idol worship is as simply as saying there is another force in the universe besides God. If you think that you worship your money, if you worship success, it's a form of idol worship. You're saying that the results of who I am as a person come from these sources. They are merely tools that are sent from Hashem for you to do your mission. Now, it's funny, I know we'll probably talk about mission all the time, and it will take a while for people who are hearing that for the first time to kind of understand what it means for them. Because it's not a normal concept. You don't turn on the radio to hear today's song in our mission for improving the universe is the top 10. You don't hear that. But we have that in the Torah. Abraham is the most giving soul. He experiments, but he didn't just wake up and go, oh, he looked in his life. He used the effort to find out what was true. So many people in our culture accept information, and we all do from sources we haven't looked into it at all. Now, there's two ways of looking into something. One is if you become a real expert at something. Okay? There are people who are experts. If you break your knee or hurt your knee, you go to an orthopedist. It's an expert. You don't get the major opinion of what everybody's thinking. You could talk to your friends who's the doctor. And then there's this kind of accumulated wisdom that's the way it's always been. So then there's a third thing of saying, I've heard from my teachers what life is like. I know sort of what I think. Let me explore on my own what this life is about. So Hashem gives us a roadmap called the Torah and says, have fun. Look into it. See what you find. Tell me what you think of two twins being born and fighting in the womb. It says they were fighting in the womb. Right? Rivka gets pregnant after trying for a while, and she can't. She's about 23 years old when she's pregnant. And she goes to see Shem, who is a descendant of Noah. Remember, we said Noah had three children, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and Shem is where the Jewish people come from. The word Semite, Sem, comes from there. And he tells her, you have two nations within you. When one rises, the other falls. And another extraordinary thing, it says that when she walked by a holy place, Jacob would try to get out. And when she walked by a place of idolatry anywhere near, Esau would try to get out. And now this is our story. So are we saying that we are born with an inclination to do one thing or another? It could be that you have an inclination. Does that mean you're stuck in that inclination? No, but it does tell you have two opposing forces that you are born with. One is the body and one is the soul. And the story of Jacob and Esau is the story of your life. The body conceals reality. And in order for it to live, has to do material things, has to eat, has to have relationships, has to do all kinds of things. It's just what a body does. But does it love God in the same way of having that desire? Not necessarily at first. Then you have a part called the soul, which recognizes something holier and is much more attracted to holy things. So there are two forms or two wings of the dove that the bird needs to fly, that we need to fly. Love of Hashem and fear, which doesn't really mean you're scared. It just means it's awe. The knowledge that there is something that is awesome in your life. You look at a sunset. How do you know it's awesome? Who told you it's awesome? You know it because something inside you can feel awe. You have a piece of awe inside you that sees that and goes, oh my gosh. So from the minute you're born, these two things are finagling and at war. When you're a baby, the body. Me, gimme, feed me, do me, gimme. Is there anything wrong with that for a baby? No, that's how a baby survives. Right? If a baby doesn't do that, you take him to the doctor or her to the doctor. That's the body has to have, and the lead at that point where there's not a development yet of the intellect, etc. So in our daily lives, we have this struggle between Jacob and Esau in our lives. Now, some people have branded Esau negative. He's the bad guy, Jacob's the good guy. This is a very, very simplistic way of looking at something that's much more complicated and something that we all experience. There are parts of us that have longings for things that may not be good for us, or things that are much more comfortable for us concerning the body. Excuse me. It's getting dusty. I'm going to open a window. Excuse me. It says, if you read the Parsha, it says Jacob came out ruddy. He was already hairy, red hair, and he was fully made. The word to make is aseh, so they named him Asav. He was made. Now, Brian, I don't know if you noticed this, but Jacob came out holding on to the heel of Esau. Did you read that part? In other words, they're twins. One's coming out and the other's got his heel, right? The word Yaakov comes from the word Akev, heel. That's how Jacob gets his name, because he's holding on. Now, of course, there's a discussion that which one is the oldest and which one came in first. If you have two babies, the one that came in first is going to come out. If you put two things in a tube, the one that came out last came out first. Doesn't matter. But in our lives, are the things that are most available are the material things, the Esau parts. And also, he was born with some of the energy. Now, this is a little bit mystical, of the worlds that were created and broke before the world of Tikkun. So he had this incredible forces inside him. Now, are we to say, well, he was born bad, we can't blame him for anything? Does that mean that if I'm born with certain inclinations that are not great for me, I'm never going to be able to fix them? This is how important this question is. These portions. The answer is no. Is that that he was given this incredible challenge to transform something that Jacob didn't have to deal with. Jacob didn't have to deal with it. He liked to study Torah, right? If someone studies every day a little bit, that's fine. But what if you love to it? You just do it. Is that the same thing as someone who has a hard time and makes themselves? There's a little more, it's a little difficult, right? Or if you have a friend and they do something for you and you know it's difficult for them. The appreciation, right? Oh, I know this is hard for you and you did it anyway, right? Rather than someone who's always at your door showing up to help you. We're thankful, but that person has has a has a knack for doing that kind of thing. So there's going to be a lot of paradoxes in this week. First, you have them born fighting in the womb. Then the story goes on that Isaac loved Esau and Rivka loved Jacob, right? I'm not saying anything that's not in the Parsha. Doesn't mean they didn't love the other one. They had a little more, they had more connection. Isaac is holy and he's like a prophet in a way. He can't see what Esau's really like. We read that he was a murderer and a very negative guy. Could his father not have seen what was in him? because it says he's getting older and he wants to give his blessings before he dies. So he calls in Esau because he's the firstborn to go hunt some animals for him so he'll eat and he'll give blessings. But the language there, once again, includes something paradoxical. He says, bring me delicacies. What, does that mean he's supposed to kill two types of animal? What do you mean delicacies? Bring me a delicacy. Bring me what I love, right? You want to do something for me? Bring that kind of chocolate I always love. But Isaac says, no, no, bring me delicacies, because people can fall into two different categories. One category is that someone is naturally sweet and has a way about them. Those are foods that are naturally sweet and easy to eat. And then there are a whole list of foods that are slightly tart that everybody loves. You cook them a little extra, they give a little spice to the meal, right? They wake you up in a different way. That's a delicacy too. When you're painting or when you're drawing or when you're writing and you come up against a little problem, it's a delicacy sometimes. The writing's going great and you're fine, but then you go, oh, wow, I don't even know what to do now. It's like it has a tom, it has a taste. And we are all like that. We have those parts. But the truth is, how do I use them? We don't beat ourselves up for being this way or that way. We just, as we say, what candle am I, which really means which sphere. Part of all of our classes are for us to get to know each other, because in order to change the world, we have to refine ourselves. Because make no mistake about it, every little change you make in yourself makes a change in the world, in those around you, and your extraordinary possibilities, breaking limitations, connecting to the infinite. Bring me delicacies. Now, Rivka sees that Isaac wants to bless Esau. Now remember, she's building a Jewish family. That's the foundation of the house. Imagine if it was Abraham, Isaac, and Esau. What would have happened to the Jewish people? Garnished. He was not a fit vessel to carry the holiness. So she has to do something to help Jacob, who refuses at first, who really doesn't want to. It's not part of his personality to trick people. He says, I don't want to do it. Your father's going to he'll know who I am. He'll curse me. And isn't this similar to where Abraham says in the beginning, to God, he says, let Ishmael live before you. And so, meanwhile, Sarah is saying, no, no, you got to get rid of Hagar and Ishmael, right? The wife tells him. She understands something because she sees how to build the family more than he does, because he's more involved in his own. He's on some ways a higher level, but a higher level and a lower level just mean degrees of revelation. So for the forefathers, their degree of revelation was very much up in the spheres a little bit, and the women were more grounded. So when it comes to making decisions, Rivka is doing what Sarah does. She said, we can't give the brachas to him. And anyway, didn't we read already that Esau came home from hunting and he was exhausted, and he says to Jacob, sell me the firstborn birthright? So rather than being able to answer all these questions, you should notice that in these simple stories are a lot of interesting, fabulous facts that our job is to sort of notice where they are in our own life. I noticed over my years that I like to complain a little bit. And I often complained about some of my compatriots that, I thought they could be helping in one way or the other. And the ones I was always mad at got me the most work. I looked in my ledger book and said, "Oh, why are you upset just because you don't get what you want, just because the body doesn't get what it wants? Hashem is sending it to you in a different way." And of course, one learns to refine oneself. So we have two different personalities born. We have Yitzhak, who, even though he's Abraham's son, is more noted for his fear of God. Now, Abraham is called in the spheros and in the candles chesed. He's just outright giving. In order to start something new, even politicians, they promise you everything they're going to give you, right? They don't tell you the real tachlis. You get, come here, I'll give you the word of Hashem. Use it. Come in and eat. Have a good time. But Sarah understood that in order to continue building, you had to have some rules to play by to see who the proponents are going to be. And Isaac was fear of God. It just means awe. It means there's a limitation to that process of giving in life. There are some people who grow up thinking, I always have to help everybody because I'm a giving person. And why doesn't everybody want to help me? Well, there's a thing called balance in life. Until you understand what your natural inclination about balance is, you can't modulate it. So Isaac, who is opposite of his father, actually looks exactly like him. It's really interesting. The Medrash points out that he shouldn't look like him. Now, what does fear and awe of God mean? It means that there's a way to, it's a kind of closeness to Hashem that doesn't come from love. You need both wings to fly. In other words, if you love someone and you always feel close to them, you could also develop a narcissistic side that says, I'm the greatest and blah, blah, blah. But when you add in the awesome part, the fear, it brings with it humility. And in the space of humility is where you and godliness can live together. So it contains love, but since there's an awesomeness which makes you feel a little smaller. The one thing it says about Moses, he was the humblest man and he walked the earth. That feeling of being smaller, of being, and yet acknowledging that you have a certain greatness to you. You have both. You have greatness because God gave it to you, not because your ego or your narcissism needs it. God said, you matter, I put you here. You're terrific. And on the other hand, it says the Kotzker Rebbe will quote him. I was talking to a friend of mine who has an autistic son who's now 27. He calls me Uncle Philip. He said, Uncle Philip, I want to tell you something from the Kotzker Rebbe that you taught me many years ago. You should have two pieces of paper in your pocket. One says, I am dust and ashes, which is total humility. And the other one, which is from Sanhedrin, says, the whole world was created for my sake. Well, which one is it? You just got to know into which pocket to reach for. When someone comes to threaten the Jewish people, the world was created for my sake, you stand up strong. When you develop relationships with people you love, you have to have a humility. You have to let your spouse in. If your spouse is there just to be an extension of you and make you feel good because you feel so much what they call love, this is a one-sided thing. In fact, Hillel says, if I am not for myself, who will be? Ima ein ani li mili. And if I'm only for myself, what am I? One of the interpretations on this Pirkei Avot Mishnah is, I have to know who I am, or be learning who I am so I can be with another person. I can create all kinds of distance between, oh, I don't want to find a mate, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that. But the more you know about yourself, the more you understand that you can handle a lot of things. You can handle your own fear and your own awe. So these chapters, the birth of those two forces are in us. Now, the power of Esau is called the power of Tohu, which means an energy that's so strong it can hardly be contained. And the power of Jacob is called the power of Tikkun, where things are resolved. Sometimes when you resolve things, they're not quite as powerful, but they're longer lasting, okay? Now, here's something I propose to all you creative people and all you working people. Sometimes when you're making things or doing business, you need the part of you that doesn't fall within the rules to take you over the line. An artist doesn't want to just, just, you want to be like Bach. He broke he just went flying. And yet he stayed within a certain thing that he had made, kind of laws of the fugue that had developed over the years and things. If you're painting, yes, there's lines, there's shapes. What do I do? No, it's not supposed to be that this should be this way. And then you go, no, it doesn't matter because the structure of your life, and most of us, and many of us do not have any structure of our life. The purpose of structure is for you to transcend the structure. A musician learns scales. Whether they practice them every day or they sing them every day, you go to voice lessons, you do this so that you can use the power of that structure to go beyond that structure, even when you're playing the same notes. Otherwise, how would you explain something like a piano competition, the Chopin competition or the Van Cliburn, when there's all these genius pianists playing and they're not making up any of the notes? They have found a way to communicate something in there that is beyond the structure of the notes. Part of that involves learning what the intention of a composer is, plus being able to be in touch with yourself and longing to put yourself into the structure. Otherwise, you could wind up with a structure that says, okay, every day is the same and I'm bored to death. Every day is not the same. Mechadesh betuvo b'chol yom tomid maaseh breshis. Every day is a new day with new energy. You're not the same who you were even yesterday. Sometimes you wake up and in one situation you feel good. The next day you wake up and nothing's changed, you feel bad. It's vicissitudes. That's life. When you go into a business meeting, you want to have some of the Esau with you. Why? Because Esau's a fighter. It's not bad to be able to stand up for yourself. A lot of us don't have that strength. We crumble when you meet someone who's strong in themselves. But if you learn that Hashem gave you, that you're basically a Jacob character, but you have access to Esau. It says when they were fighting and Rivka goes to see Shem and Aver, they said when one is stronger, the other will be weaker. And when one rises, the other falls. So there are times when you need to have more force in your life. A very simple thing is trying to get a child to take medicine that they don't want to. Is it a kindness to give them medicine? Yeah. Is it a kindness to make them scream to do it sometimes? It's a kindness. It's just it's gevura sheb chesed. You're not making them scream to make them scream. You're saying I have to have a healthy child. They don't like taking medicine. I have to find some way. Sometimes they'll not want to do it. Sometimes they'll not want to go to the dentist, whatever it is. So on the one hand, we are all paradoxical. we are all full of humility and love. And on the other hand, all of that is hidden by our bodily existence. And how we get those two things together is the story of the Jewish people. And that's why these people appear before Jacob has his children, I think. Because after Jacob has his children, uh, you know, um, Abraham has one child, Yitzhak. Yitzhak has one child who's righteous, Jacob. Jacob has 12 children. Okay, we've built a strong enough foundation for it to sprout. Things sprout, but they don't sprout right away. First, you have to have very strong roots. You got to plant deep. You got to grow and be able to get through the weather. And then all of a sudden, some generations down, you have all kinds of fruits growing. Now, the number 12, children, we notice that this comes up a lot, right? How many constellations do we say there are? 12. How many tribes are there? 12. Just like other numbers, there's 3 forefathers, there's 4 mothers, there's 3 matzahs, there's 4 cups of wine, there are 7 days of the week. So each number has its significance. But the 12 tribes, does anybody know how we derive that number? Okay. Hashem has many names. God really has no name, because if it had a name, it would be a limitation. But one of the names, Hashem, the one we call Hashem, which is pronounced differently, is made of 4 letters, Yud, Hey, Vav, and Hey. That's 4 letters. Can someone tell me the permutation of 4? 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. Permutation. How much is 4 times 3 is 12. 12 times 2 is 24. So the permutation of that name would be 24, except that 2 of the letters are the same. Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. So it's the permutation of 3. 3 times 2 is 6. 6 times 2 is 12. These are permutations of the energies of God's name, and each tribe has a different combination of letters. And this permeates the Torah and the constellations in our lives. In other words, depending on which letter is first, second, third, fourth, when we do in the Kabbalah, it's talked about greatly in the meaning of each month and what that means. So now there's another interesting thing. This week, does anybody remember how this week's Parsha starts? It says, these are the progeny of Yitzhak, Yitzhak, son of Abraham. Right? That's what it says. When you're talking about your children, you say, these are my children. You don't say, these are my children and my father was. It's weird. The Kedushas Levi talks about this. Why does it say, there's many reasons, but why does it say these are the progeny? Because the progeny of Abraham, the word toldos means also from the word yeled, to give birth, yalad, yalda. To give birth means to produce something. To produce something means to act in a certain way. So when the progeny of Abraham is Isaac, it means that Isaac did the work to become righteous. That's why he is the really son of Abraham. The son of Isaac and Rivka, there's 2 sons, right? But one of them did the work to be righteous, and the other one didn't. So he's not considered part of the progeny. But he has the same parents. After that, things went to the way we know them. Whoever your parents are, that's who you are. But if you notice in the beginning, that's not the way it is. person had to be righteous is the real son. And this is why you see that in the story of Esau, it says that he was a hunter. He would lie to his father by asking him questions that made his father think he was righteous. How do you how do you tax salt, which of course does not need a tax, to pretend that he was righteous? Well, we know from the Midrashim that he was quite a bad guy. So one becomes a forefather, and the mothers as well. Who were the mothers? Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. These people are the forefathers and foremothers of the Jewish people. Now we can have all the stories. Most of the stories that people know from the Torah start with Exodus and the going into Egypt. But these are the stories of how we build our roots, where we come from, and why ultimately God chose the Jewish people to give the Torah. Now, we believe that the Jewish soul comes from a different place than a non-Jewish soul. Let's just say different. But at Mount Sinai, God chose the Jewish people. Well, if you say that God chose the Jewish people because of their soul, that's like saying I took the thing that looked better to me. That's not a choice. What is pretty much the same is the body. Our body is the same as the body of anybody else in a way. But God chose the body of the Jewish people to transform it so that the body can teach the soul how to live and the soul can teach the body how to live. Our whole talks here are how to integrate this information about kindness, about not speaking ill of people, about giving charity, about how to deal with negativity in the world, all these psychological and soulful and psychological, physical, philosophical matters. They're not just spiritual, they compose many sides like a gem, and they contain everything. When you study that, it can tell your body how to act in the world. Because hamaisa hu aika, in the end, it's what you do that counts. There's an argument in the Torah which is more important, studying Torah mitzvahs or doing acts of kindness. It says, well, Torah and mitzvahs, but they do what they're there is for us to tell you how to act in the world. You can't sit away in your room all your life. You have to go out. And this is where, when you go out in the street, you learn from Jacob on how to deceive. And from Lavan, who's Rebecca's brother, who's going to deceive him. You have to dress like everybody else. You have to act like, if you're doing business, you can't just come off davening. You have to go out into a world with with everything that's in the world and be able to function there sort of in disguise, because who you really are is a soul and a body trying to, fix the world. But you have to learn to do it. You learn that from the other sides of you that have different inclinations. So I remember one of the first classes I ever went to see Rabbi Jacobson. Believe me, I wasn't wearing a yarmulke or anything else. I had long hair and red shoes, and I was a wild man. And he started to talk about Jacob and Esau as the body and the soul. I related to it right away, that there are two functions always fighting within me or wrestling for balance. And later we're going to see a story where when Jacob is coming back from from running away from his brother, he wrestles with an angel, the angel of Esau. Jews are still wrestling with themselves. Look at Israel. Look at any congregation. We're always wrestling with ourselves. We're trying to get the balance right, which is the name of my Hanukkah song. If anybody knows it, we'll be sending it around. So this is Toldos. Now, I guess what I tried to make clear is, because is how the Torah develops. It develops into a spiritual state. Sometimes when you haven't heard this kind of stuff, it's good to hear how it affects you right away and deeply. But to understand that, yes, there are two sides of me that are fighting. I'm not evil. I've just got normal inclinations. And there are people I can consult on this. There are people I can talk to. How do I learn from my mistakes? I once read a sad thing, and someone posted that they never forgave themselves and for things they did in their life. Just it made me sad. I'm not talking about max murderers either. Judaism doesn't operate that way. Judaism knows that we're imperfect. In fact, Moses says to Hashem when he wants to wipe out the Jewish people, so to speak, and start over with him, right? Because they betrayed God. And in the Medrash, it sort of says that Moses says, wait a minute, this is a trick. You made us imperfect. You knew we were going to mess up, and now you want to punish us for it? Right? We are imperfect. But we also are perfect. And we have to learn in some ways to acknowledge and to own and to love all sides of ourselves and maneuver to get them into a more balanced position where we're fulfilling our life, depending on our situation, and bringing light to our corner of the world, which by refining ourselves, we make this a home for God. So say you have a natural inclination to do something that's a little off, but if you transform that into something holy, that becomes a place where your soul can dwell. So you're making the world a home for God. So this week is tonight is I wish everybody happy Kislev. It's the month of light. Light is that pure energy, the light that's called the Or Ein Sof, the light of the Ein Sof, which is the first emanation from what we call the Ein Sof, which is so strong that no one can stand in front of it. It'd be like standing in a ray of light in the sun, so to speak. It disappears. What we study and what we do each day helps create a vessel for us to hold more light and more goodness and kindness and the ability to change and the ability to teach and the ability to love. So this is the work we do on ourselves. And as we do that on ourselves, it affects everything around us. So this is a month of light. You're going to see, we see that we celebrate Hanukkah. We don't mostly celebrate the military victory, even though we say in Al Anisim. It's mostly the symbols are the light, that the light was in the darkness, that a little cruse of oil, one thing, was able to rebuild everything. That cruise is a part of you. That's part of your soul, that no matter what happened to you in your life, no matter what abuse even, no matter what things you went through, there is a cruise of oil in you from which you can relight and rebuild yourself and to do and bring joy to this world. With that, I want to say good Shabbos to everybody. Good Shabbos, Kislev, Rosh Hashanah, Rosh Chodesh, and everybody should have start studying about Hanukkah. Find a book about Hanukkah that's at least learn the story and learn the stories, and then we'll be talking about them as time goes on and connecting them to the weekly Parsha. And I say, if you haven't read this week's Parsha, please read it. If you have read it, please read some of the commentary. It's like putting the sauce on the delicacies. Make it really taste. You get the taste of it. Because I can tell you this, when you read these stories, I know that for myself, it touches me in a way it might not touch someone else. I will see something from my perspective, and you will all see something from your perspective that I may never see, because it's eternal and it's connected to your soul. So thank you, everybody, for another week. I can't tell you how precious this class is to me, and how I started my day by going to a little funeral service, how precious life is, and how precious it is to be a Jew and to have the kind of thinking and loving and good heart that we have. And may we use it in this world to bring peace and love. And good Shabbos. It's Phillip Namanworth, Creative Spirituality. Thank you, Shlomo, Lindy. The classes are on YouTube. And if we need help with anything, or if you'd like to learn something, you can always get in touch with me. Please do. Do not be afraid. If there's something that's confusing you or not confusing you, and you want to talk to me to be confused, I'm also good at that. So thank you very much for coming, and hopefully we'll see you next time.
Every soul is a candle. Every soul is a candle of God, sent down to this world, to your special